4-1 it finishes. Let's just confirm what that means at the top of the table. Remember, Manchester City beating Newcastle yesterday meant that they had closed the gap down to 2, but it's now restored to 5 points at the top of the table for Mikel Arteta's side. City, though, remember, do have a game in hand. Joining us, Frank Leboeuf and Jurgen Klinsmann. Jurgen, a massive win for Arsenal considering what happened midweek.
Absolutely a massive win. I mean, it was a highly interesting game. Obviously, Tottenham with their back against the walls, and they know that it's difficult times fighting now relegation suddenly and having a change of manager. So they went through a lot the last couple of days, and Arsenal needed these 3 points also badly because Man City is coming back up. So from the beginning on, we saw a highly interesting game. I thought the energy in the stadium was unbelievable. At least it came across on TV. So supportive from the Spurs fans. They really believed in something special can happen. Even when Arsenal went up, with Eze, his first goal, there was belief. They responded right away. Kolomouani scored then the equalizer just 2-3 minutes after Arsenal's goal, and the atmosphere seemed to be boiling over. It was fantastic. But then, right after halftime, Gyökeres with his first one, like 2-3 minutes into the second half, kind of killed almost everybody. It's just like no. And then the 3-1 then killed it off. Even if Richarlison, I think at the end, if this goes in the 83rd minute there, 3-2. We might have still an interesting game. Overall, there's no doubt that Arsenal was the better team over the whole 90 minutes, created far more chances. And Tottenham is now going through an emotional roller coaster the next couple of weeks because they need desperately points, obviously, to fight relegation. At the same time, they play Champions League, as crazy as it sounds, in the middle and in March. And to juggle these two things, it's not going to be easy for Tudor, but it's doable. I thought, we saw some light things, with Spurs, some positives that they can definitely take away with. But obviously, when you hear then the result 4-1, it is for all of us as Spurs fans, it's a very, very bitter result.
Yeah, rollercoaster, I think, complimentary. I think Tower of Terror is what it's like for Spurs at the moment. We'll talk about that and their relegation scrap, which is definitely a fact later on. But for Arsenal, Craig, as I said, exactly what needed. And it's the two new signings that they spent a lot of money on, obviously, in the summer, who haven't maybe had the impact that we're expecting, had the impact today.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Gyökeres had a lot of time and space for the first one, and he shrugged off young Archie Gray for the second. But that's part of the game. You have to deal with that. Eze, obviously, it has been a roller coaster for him. He's a better player, I think, much better player than we've seen in terms of his consistency. But I think that's been plagued a little bit by Odegaard's return, and that kind of muddied the waters. So he spent a bit of time out of position, he spent a bit of time on the bench, and I think he's found it hard to get the consistency. We talked about Odegaard last year in the bigger games. He's a tidy player, but does he do it enough in the in terms of end product in the bigger games? And I think there is a question to be asked about that. Whereas I think if you give Eze a run in the team, I do think he's got more end product to his game. Odegaard does some lovely things in the middle of the park and some nice little link-up play and all that. I'm not taking that away from him, Stevie, but no. I just feel with Eze, he may sometimes look a little lazy, a little lumbered, and maybe gives the ball away now and again, but you just feel that he's got that special ingredient in him to play a pass, to score a goal, to do something different.
Remember what you said during the game. You said Odegaard's not in the position in the box to score in the first goal.
Right.
And that really is, that's been a problem for Arsenal all season. Somebody from the middle of the park getting in the box and putting the ball in the back of the net, because Gyökeres hasn't been as consistently doing that as we hoped. So yeah, Personally, I think Eze has to be given a chance in that spot in a run of games.
Yeah,
because it's unfair to put somebody in for a game, take him out for a game, in for another game, out in such an important position. Because that is the key for Arsenal. They need somebody in the middle of the park to go forward and either create chances, and he did that last week in the FA Cup, and then today he's scoring goals. So he has to be able to get some consistent games together to give an opportunity to be the player we know he is.
I remember when he scored.
You keep taking him in and out. He's never going to do that consistently.
I don't know how long after it was when he scored the hat trick at the Emirates against Spurs that they played Villa away, I'm not saying it was the next game, but it might have been a game or two. I don't know, can't remember. But they played well away, didn't play particularly well. Odegaard played and Eze was shifted onto the left-hand side, which, by the way, is where he played for Crystal Palace a lot. But he had a really poor game and he was subbed, I think, after 45 minutes. And he just felt that knocked his... Even though he'd scored the hat-trick not too long before, you just felt that kind of knocked his confidence a little bit, thinking, I'm going to get shifted when Odegaard's back, I'm not going to play. And sometimes that gets into the mental side of a player's head. But I agree with Stevie. I think if they give him a run of games in that position, sometimes he gets a little frustrating during the game, but most of the times he then pops up and he does something really good. He plays a lovely pass over the top, or he turns up, he scores a goal, or he's on the end of something. And I think at the moment, if you asked, most Arsenal fans, who would you prefer in there? I think certainly from my point of view, Eze would be the one. And on the other point with the strikers, we've had this conversation. I think Julian Laurens has said many times, Arteta it'll be horses for courses in terms of if it's Kai Havertz or Gabriel Jesus or Viktor Gyökeres that plays up front. I think that's smoke and mirrors. I think the player that plays up front is the player that's scoring goals. And the fact that Gyökeres wasn't and Jesus was fit and Havertz was back was the reason he was on the bench. But if he goes on a run between now and end of the season, which will take them to the league title, by the way, he'll be the guy that starts, regardless whether they're playing Wolverhampton Wanderers or Manchester City.
Jurgen, just going back to Eze, just explain it as a manager, how much... Mikel Arteta's got a plan, yeah? He knows exactly what he wants his 11 players out there to do. How much sway do you give new players like Eze, who maybe doesn't fit one of those boxes, yet can add a different dimension to what you're thinking? Obviously, the narrative was, Arteta doesn't trust Eze. As a manager, how do you deal with that balance?
Well, I think, Mikel Arteta is doing a fantastic job there. Evaluating those players every day, thinking about, who's the next opponent, what fits the best also towards that opponent that they're playing. And, he has obviously a high-quality roster with 16, 18 players at least, where he can double the positions and he can, play different formats, play different ways. Look who's on the bench. Havertz on the bench. Martinelli came in at the end, and then it depends, how do you want to kind of field yourself defensively? When you have Eze on the field, you play him as a 10, and behind you have Odegaard. And if you play him as well, then you need a really good number 6, cleaning up the mess, which Declan Rice, is usually doing that. It's a daily job. And probably throughout the week you change a couple of times your ideas and your thoughts on who to field then at the end of the day and on the weekend in the games. But this is what the beauty is of the job when you have so exceptional players, so many exceptional players in your roster that you have that choice on the weekend or during the week when you play Champions League games. And it's not an easy one. It's not an easy one because for us fans, it's a heated discussion. Who's the better one? Obviously, Eze, when you see him play, he's at the right time at the right spot. He's creative. He does a little bit of the crazier stuff. Sometimes he looks a little bit kind of off, and then suddenly he turns it on, and he can decide your game in a split second, and that's what we love, from a fan perspective. But then you also need the consistency as well, and that's something that he probably talks to him every week about.
Frank, best till last as always. Overall, away from Gyökeres, away from Eze, you look at this, and this is just a huge sigh of relief, isn't it, for Arsenal fans?
Oh yes, definitely. That was a real challenge, and especially for Derby, and you needed to win that game, and they did it. And even if the first half was, let's say, so in the term of fighting, and I think Tottenham were very courageous and they tried their best. As Jurgen mentioned, as soon as they scored a second goal, it was like already over. And it's only fair that Arsenal won that game because you can feel that they were much better than Spurs. Spurs had 10 important men in their team away because of injury. So it was unbalanced, I would say, in a way. But overall, I have to say that and that was part of the debate, I'm very fond of Eze in the way that he pushes himself to go to the goal, where other guy is more somebody who's organizing or distributing the game. What I like about Eze, because he does that, he allows Gyökeres to be free and to be more efficient as well. So I think it suits better the forward line when you have Eze.
I mean, we've all played in big derbies, haven't we?
Yes,
Yourself.
Helston. Helston against Mullion.
You forgot Dan was here. Dan's here.
Sorry for you intruding in this conversation.
Sorry, Dan.
Daniel. I'm sure you played in a big school derby
yes.
or something. But come on. You said sigh of relief for Arsenal fans. I suppose, in a sense, because they stuffed it up against Wolves.
Exactly.
But the derby point being is, you know, people say derbies can throw up certain results, and yet they do now and again. But on paper, I think Stevie was 4-1 in his prediction on the show, because yesterday or the day before, because this is where these teams are.
Yes.
It would have taken a second stinker of a performance from Arsenal and something a bit special from Spurs for this result to be any different.
So to that point, Craig, let's take a look at the bottom of the table. How much trouble are they in?
Well, actually, they're in it, you know, they're in a relegation battle. Personally, unless Igor Tudor completely loses the way, I don't think they will be relegated, because I think Nottingham Forest and West Ham have way less to work with. Right. Yeah, they have a lot of injuries, but Forest haven't got a goal in them. And you know, West Ham got a very experienced manager, and I think they may get out of it. I think Forest are in a bit of trouble at this moment in time. And although Spurs are hurtling towards it fast as that table picks up, and you never say you're too good to go, I just feel they are better equipped than those two other teams.
Was I the only one today that actually saw some spirit in Spurs? I know it finished 4-1, but I thought I saw some spirit there. And if you've got that, they've got enough good players. It's why they're going to be able to stay up. I said last week that the only job Igor Tudor had was to get the players together and get them playing for each other, because of the talent they do have. Yes, they got the injuries. So I thought I saw some spirit there today. You know, particularly when they went one behind. We sat here and talked about, listen, if they go behind, the roof could cave in. It didn't. They took the punch, and guess what? They ended up, a couple of minutes later, they equalised. And they kept going and kept fighting.
They did lose
to the
4-1
end.
though.
Yeah, I know, but
But it was a low bar.
in terms of the spirit, that's what I'm talking
Well,
about.
even you-
Because that's what's going to keep this team up.
So during the first half,
That's what they need.
Right.
so during
They're
the
not
first
playing
half,
Arsenal every week either.
I said to you during the first half, I just threw it out and I went, it's been a bit better first half from Spurs. And Stevie's like, they've only had one shot. Right. I said, yeah, that's true. But it has been, if you looked at some of the first half performances under Thomas Frank, it's a really low bar. Yeah. But it was a better first half because they at least competed.
Yep.
But that's a sorry thing to say, is it not?
Yeah. Well, as you say, that's how low the bar is.
That's suggesting that whether, you know, I think Thomas Frank...
But that's what it's going to take, though, isn't it?
I think Thomas Frank was at the
Stay
wrong
up.
movie. I think he was out his depth at Tottenham, and listen, some may agree, may not. And I think he was at the wrong place, the wrong club for him. It was too big at this moment in time. Brentford, one thing, Tottenham, another. But you can't argue that, well, these players showed some spirit today. They've shown very little of it for most of the season, and that's why the manager was in the position that he was in. Having players ignoring him coming off the field, having the first half performances against Villa, City and others that they had, and got berated by the home crowd. We saw a little bit today. I think the worry was they've played a back three before this season, but he seems to want to go with a back three. Igor Tudor, he was a centre-half himself. But those three at the back with Paulinho looked a little confused about their positioning at times. I think sometimes when you play a back four, and we saw it under Ruben Amorim, who kept going with this back three, and United were getting picked apart. When you go with the three centre-backs, you have to work even harder at getting your space and your positioning correct. And that's going to be the difficult for them going forward, particularly with a midfielder playing in the back line. When your captain is suspended, he will be back, of course, Romero. But how long before he gets suspended again? So, you know, he's got a lot of things to work out, Igor Tudor.
Do you agree with Steve, though, Jurgen? There was a flicker of hope today.
I totally agree with Steve. Yeah, absolutely, because you sense the crowd in the first half. You know, usually it's the team that kind of picks up the crowd and gets it going. But today was from the first minute on, the crowd was behind the team. They wanted to help them. They wanted to push them. They wanted to give them energy. And there was a lot of energy in the Spurs side. Yes, they didn't create that many chances as Arsenal did. throughout the entire game. But there was a positive feeling. There was positive body language. They were throwing themselves into the battles. Here and there, still a little bit naive, like at the last goal, for example, with R.J. Gray kind of get pushed away from Gyökeres, and these moments, that's where you want more physicality in there. But I think that could come. I mean, now the next couple of weeks, it's an emotional situation there at Tottenham, because on one extreme you're fighting relegation, which they are not used to, and the other extreme is you're in the Champions League still. So to handle these two topics, it's not going to be easy. But I felt in the first half that there was good energy there was good spirit there, and hopefully they continue that way.
There's a headline there somewhere, isn't there? Professional footballers run around.
Well, yes,
well
indeed.
done.
Yeah.
There were.
It's like football pundit doesn't moan about watching football.
Who's that? but actually, they were kind of hurtling towards a relegation battle last year, in victory in the Europa League.
Yes.
You know, they were, in the end, it was a little bit more, but both themselves and Man United last year at one point were just nosediving down towards that bottom three. Not quite as bad as it is this year, which I think kind of tells you where they are in terms of their. I know they've got a lot of injuries, but I look at their squad and it's far from perfect, and I think there's no way they should have been both seasons down around 15th, 16th or 17th. And frankly, it's quite embarrassing.